Hello, everyone. So, what happens when you're in the darkest moments of your life? The darkest moments where it's so easy to just look down and not see hands that may be coming up, or you searching so much to try and get out of this hole and you can't. But what if there is a solution? What if you actually look up? What will you see then? Today we're taking this suicide awareness topic to a bit of a different kind of level. But sit back and listen to this, and hopefully you can gain some insights, and hopefully even more than that, you can share this with other people, and we can spread the awareness and save some lives. Hello, Tom. How are you today?
Very good, thanks, Carina. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Sorry, I didn't really introduce you very well. So I know it's a very dark subject today, right? But I want to put some light on this dark subject, because right at this time of the year, towards the holidays, it's supposed to be a time of celebration, a time of happiness and togetherness and family and all that. But so many people find themselves alone in darkness and not seeing any other alternative but to end it all. And so what I'm saying is, like, have you ever experienced that? And if not, what happens if instead of looking down, as we do when we're depressed, we look up? And I'm asking you that question. What happens? And what are your thoughts on that?
I guess when people are looking down, they don't think they're looking down, they just think they're seeing. When we're extremely depressed and we see darkness, that's all we see. And I think what's called depression doesn't cause hopelessness. I think it's critical to understand that depression is hopelessness. And that's already a huge leap, I think. Sure, it may be that your diet, you're low in B6 or vitamin B12 or essential amino acids, or you may have chronic Lyme disease, if there is such a thing. You may have all kinds of things going on that are dragging you down. So organic disease that cause you to feel hopeless. But there isn't some extraordinary, mysterious neuropsychiatric disease, as far as I'm concerned, of depression, a nebulous, ephemeral, indefinable, invisible, elusive thing. So when we're lost in the hopelessness, by definition, we think there's no way out. And why would we look for hope if we are totally without hope? We believe there is no hope, no reason for hope, and we're seeing things absolutely as they are. So the idea of looking up, there is no up. There is no anything else except the darkness you're lost in, I think. But I also believe that every human being who ever was must have experienced that in one way or another in some lifetime. Otherwise, we're not equal. We all, if we don't give everything, we don't give everything. And if we don't get to the end of it all, we don't get to the end of it. There's some very famous cases. The Bucky Fuller was one extraordinary story to read on Wikipedia. His family was in dire straits and he believed it was his problem, all his fault. So he took out a life insurance policy and went off to do away with himself on the beach in Michigan, I think. And he found himself taken up into some kind of sphere of light and enlightened, and came back down and changed the world. There are many, many, many stories of similar happenings. Eckhart Tolle's wasn't a million miles away from that, nor was that of Jill Bolte Taylor, the neuroanatomist who had a stroke of insight, as she called it. So what I get from a lot of those accounts is that everybody goes through it, and everybody inevitably comes out the other side also. When we're left grieving for someone we've lost through suicide, they haven't come out the other side into our world, that's for certain. But we absolutely can't say that they haven't come into some other world. We just don't know.
Okay, that's what I wanted. That's where I wanted to go with this. Like, a lot of people lose. We'd say that if we look at it from a 3D perspective, right? You'd say like some people attempt suicide and their lives change because of it, because they survive it, and other people don't survive. But like you were saying, perhaps they have gone into a different. We know they've probably gone into a different realm, and maybe a better one for that. It's about us seeing it from a different perspective. So what if we can see, instead of feeling guilt and shame and blame for that person that was lost, what if we can change that attitude and look at it in a different way? As in seeing that, okay, let me explain, Nak. I found my uncle who committed suicide, right? He gassed himself, and I discovered the body. And for a long time, I was feeling such guilt for not seeing the signs or whatever it is. And I mean, later on, as you grow older and you become wiser, you realize that everyone has their own path, right? So what if we could see life like that, and see people that they have their own path, and there's no need for us to feel guilty or to be angry that they left us? What do you think about it?
That's the almighty conundrum. Eckhart Tolle says, and I like to agree with him, he says that life will give you whatever experience is most helpful for the evolution of your consciousness. He says you, meaning all of us. But
Yes.
if that's true of me, then it's true of all the ones I love and care about and feel responsible for as well. So the huge conundrum there, it's a huge puzzle, is if everybody's going to get the experience they most need anyway, what difference does it make what I do for them? And I guess the only way out of that paradox is if they truly are me, if we are one organism. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense. We say, well, let them do their own thing. But if we're all one creature, then anything I do for them, I do for me, and anything they do for me, and it's one experience anyway. I guess that's thanks, you've revealed that to me now. It is one experience anyway. So you see someone like Eckhart Tolle, who's now in his 70s, and he's traveling the world. I think he's in South Africa shortly. And he's still hell-bent on spreading the word, spreading enlightenment. But why bother if everybody's going to be enlightened at their own time anyway, you know? But it's our essence to want to reach out and help one another. That the most painful experience we can have is to see somebody we love or care about suffering and feel responsible for it and feel that there's something we can do and we don't know what to do. There is no greater pain, I think. I can't imagine a greater pain, and I think that's the same for all of us human beings, whether we call one another terrorists or psychopaths or whatever. I think that's our essence. We're all like that. And when people commit atrocities, I think it's because that urge has been thwarted and subverted and twisted. And we can all get angry and frustrated because our nature is to help. And when we feel we're not helping as powerfully as we can get very, very frustrated and miserable and unhappy. And I think one thing that most suicides probably have in common is feeling not that life is not worth living even, so much as that they've become a burden on others. That is, I think, often what clinches it for them. They feel that they have nothing at all to offer and that they become a burden. And I think it's crucial that people realize that anything they do can be incredibly more important and useful than they think. When I came to the States first in 2009, my wife-to-be, Kelly, took me to the Wild Almond Park. And on the way out, we saw some kind of a piece of sculpture, I've forgotten what it was, and the quotation was, "Never let how little you think you can do prevent you from doing anything at all." And that really made my day. Sometimes it seems tiny. You can certainly relate to that, your experiences in the detention, Carina, I'm sure.
Yes, 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 and I think that from there would spin. Thinking about how sometimes we feel like we're so small and so insignificant, and I think that probably is a different, and that we also can do nothing. That whatever we do is worthless, and possibly that's how you feel when you're in those dark throes of depression, where it's like, I'm pointless, I'm useless, my life is pointless, and I'm so small. Why would I even make the effort? And yet, if we turn that around, we realize that even if we can change one person's life, or even if by smiling at someone at a particular day, and we might think we're small, we might save that life. So going back again, if we are all one and we all each other, right, then we all, I'm going to say this, but it's going to be like gods, like in a sense, because we're all pieces of God, right? So surely with that would be something to instill in someone who's in the throes of depression.
Absolutely.
And how would you do? And
how would you do that? It's different for absolutely everybody. That's an almighty question. There was an old farmer I knew in Donegal, and the last time I visited him, I was troubled by something a colleague had said to me. And he was in extremis. He was about to die, but he was such... That only occurred to me later. His head was down on the table. He was very near the end. He could hardly speak. He was so weak. And yet here I came to him with my troubles, because I knew he was a giver all his life. He was a very jovial, humorous fellow. Josie Heakin was his name. And I showed him what the colleague had written to me, and he knew how upset I was. And he was a very simple, very uneducated man, but he was intuitive. And he turned to me, and he managed just to produce a version of a poem by somebody famous. I've forgotten whom exactly, but Josie's version was, we come into this world naked and bare. We live our lives filled with trouble and care. We're going to, we don't know where, but if we're all right here, we'll be all right there. And he made my day with that, of course. It was the last time I saw him. But as I left the room, Carina, there was a man who wasn't in San Diego. He was in a rural nursing home in Donegal, and he'd had a stroke about 18 months before and been left there, unable to swallow, unable to speak, being fed by tube. And Frank McBraerty, and every time I passed his, a bachelor, every time I passed his bed, he was looking at football on a little tiny portable TV at the foot of his bed. And every time I passed him, he'd lift his eyes and he'd give me this extraordinary smile. And he almost brought me to tears. I thought, here I am, fit and young and able-bodied with all the cares in the world around me, and worried, and I can't smile at anybody. And here's this guy with absolutely nothing. He can't eat, he can't drink, he can't talk. And with one smile, he could give me something. And my favorite, you know Devin, I think you interviewed him recently. Devin
Yes,
has asked, I think, asked for our favorite Bible stories. I'm not a Christian, Green, as you know, but one story I love above all others is the Canaanite woman story, when apparently Jesus is absolutely at the end. Apparently, he seems to be worn out. This is even before he goes and borrows a colt and curses the fig tree and sweats bullets the night before his agony. But apparently, he takes the disciples, the apostles, out of the preaching territory of Judea or Israel into Tyre and Sidon, the region of the Canaanites. So they were going to stop preaching for a while and regroup. They were obviously all worn out, I think, including, most of all, Jesus, no doubt. And the Canaanite woman, you know the story, comes screaming into the room saying she wants healing for her daughter who's possessed with demons. And I guess she's probably using foul language. And she's obviously obnoxious with all these demons. And Jesus knows that. This is the last thing I need right now, apparently. I've got to walk away from this one. And the apostles apparently get into it with her and then tell him, he just ignores her, walks away. And they tell him, the Savior of the world, send her away, Lord. And he does try to. We don't know how strong the word dog was to the Canaanites. It may have been stronger or less strong than bitch. We don't know. I don't know. But he says that the scraps from the table of the master are for the children of the master. He doesn't have anything. And if he did have any energy at all, it would be for his own people, the Jews. And instead of indulging in the natural retort, the ego repair, as Tola would call it, and saying, well, so-and-so you, she calms down and she says, but the crumbs from the table of the master the dogs on the street can eat those. In other words, if you even had the tiniest, if you even had that smile that you spoke about, Carina, and I guess then his face suddenly did soften into a smile, and he gave her one look because she was giving him that look, I suppose. And then he said he melted before her, and he said, "Great is your faith," and the daughter was healed, they say, and I believe she was. So, I mean, in every healing, each person heals the other, I suppose, but in that case, it certainly seems that she took the initiative. And that reminded him that when he thought he had absolutely nothing left to give, he still had something, and that something made all the difference. And if it was 2,000 years ago, the fact that that story comes down to us now, those two people comes down to us, is pretty powerful. When the guy had absolutely nothing left, and if even if I had, it wouldn't be for you, he said, "Get lost." And she gives him another chance, and he says, "Wow, great is your faith."
Wow.
So when we think, you said look up. I hesitated when you said look up because I had 3 sort of out-of-body experiences. I wasn't near death, but they were like near-death experiences, 3 of them, and it was as though I was experiencing the Big Bang, Carina, and I could talk about them for the rest of eternity, probably, even though they lasted moments each. But one sort of takeaway was that if you close your eyes very tight and see stars, that might be like the Big Bang, you know. But if we're exploding out from the last Big Bang, all of us together, we can look back at the bang and think, oh my God, how horrific. And that could happen again any moment. That explosion, that cataclysm, a trauma, massive, incredible trauma. We could turn around and see, where on earth are we going? We could look down to incredible depths and think, I could fall down there. Or we could look up and wonder as well. But what we can always do as humans is we can swivel and turn to the person beside us. And there's almost always somebody beside us. On a phone or somewhere, we can turn to them. So when you said looking up, to me it's often looking sideways. There was a farm, I'm coming to the end of my rant now, but there was a farmhouse when I had absolutely no faith in Donegal, and this very, very, very charismatic lady, a farmer's wife, a widow, had a few cows, and on the wall was written something like, "I sought my God, and my God I could not see. I sought my soul, and my soul eluded me. I sought my neighbor, and I found all 3. And that really went home with me. I thought, oh my goodness gracious. So often it's only when we try and reach out and give any tiny bit of help to somebody else, even that smile, as you say, that we suddenly find ourselves being aided, because that's what we're created to do, is to help one another, obviously.
Yes, I agree with you. And we also realize that we're never really alone. There's always someone there, even though when you're in that depth of darkness, you feel like you're all alone, but there's always someone there waiting for you, or, you know, giving you your hand, so you just need to see it. And when I said look up, I know as you were talking, I didn't mean it that way. I meant it more in a practical way, because yes, you were talking like when you really, but it's right. You should have you took it to a better level. But what I was thinking about is, you know, when you down and out, you sit and you walk around looking down, and now everyone looks at their phones and you're dejected. But if you go out and you put your shoulders back and you actually look up at your environment, and that's exactly what you were saying. Look out, look at the environment, look at the person next to you, then it makes the world of difference.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
Yes. So yes. So thank you for that. That was beautiful. I love that story. And again, we feel like we look at someone that's in a depressed state, and we cry within ourselves because we think we can't do anything. But sometimes all that person needs is someone to listen to realize that they're seen. So you go to that person and say, you know what, I see you, and let's come, give me your hand, let's go for a walk, or something as simple as that seems simple, but just to take that person out of that environment into another environment and just changes everything.
Listening. What is listening, Carina?
Yes. Well, maybe it's more about hearing, because a lot of times people talk and they say something, but they're actually feeling something. But if you listen, if you hear intuitively, and if you if you close your eyes and you hear you can hear people and you can hear what they're really saying. Because sometimes words don't say what we really mean them to say. And there's an experiment that I've done. I don't know if you've tried it, and people think I'm crazy. And I haven't told anyone about this. So, have you ever tried walking down the street? Like, I know the streets pretty well because I walk around a lot. And close your eyes, right, and walk. Obviously not into the street when you know there's a piece that's not the road, right, or in the park or whatever. If you close your eyes and you walk along there, you see things, you hear things, and you see things so much differently, but you also feel peace and trust. And maybe that's another thing we need to understand, that when you're in darkness, there is something there, even if it is just within us.
That is beautiful. Yeah. And my question again was, what is listening? Because you're an extraordinary listener. What is listening? Tell me.
For me, listening is just being. It's like being here with you totally. That's it. Nothing else. So there's no distractions. I don't care what's happening outside. I don't care what's happening around me. I'm just here with you. That's it. And possibly, like Tole would say, you're in the present moment, but you're in the present moment together. So it's not like you're in the present moment, just you. You're in the present moment, but you're totally present and with the other person. Does that even make sense?
I think listening is something we could talk about forever and ever. But it's something that science doesn't begin to understand, because I think the person who's thinking about suicide, they've gone through all kinds of horrendous experiences, and they see no point to those, no payback, no meaning to them. But the extraordinary thing is that when you bring everything you've experienced to another person to listen with all your heart and soul and being, then you have taken all your painful experiences, and without any words, they have made you who you are, and they have made you into this listening device. And there are no ends to the depths with which we can listen to each other, and there are no ends to the depths we can heal each other simply by listening, I think, because we can absolutely give everything we are and everything we ever have been to one another when we really truly listen.
Yes, I love that. And then as you open your heart as well, if you have the courage, you start opening your heart as you get trust each other more and more. And then with that open heart, it just more healing comes. And of course, it's you healing each other at this moment. So I think that every interaction, like these interactions for me, like doing the podcast, for example, it changes me and it changes everybody, because after this show and this interaction, I'm different. And so the podcast and everything else becomes different because of it. So it's really a beautiful blessing on some level.
I think there's a science to faith healing, which certain doctors are beginning to discover now, and getting very excited about it, as they should do. A lot of them have come to it through mindfulness, I think, like people like John Kabat-Zinn and Howard Schubiner. But they're beginning to realize, and they express it differently, but the way I would express it is that when you meet someone who's experienced a lot of trauma, and the trauma hasn't been released or the emotions haven't been processed, it manifests generally either as some chronic pain syndrome or anxiety, depression, insomnia, tinnitus. There are so many syndromes, and they're beginning to realize that the vast majority of chronic pain syndromes do not result from ongoing structural issues which are contributing to the sensations, but rather from a replaying of emotional circuits in the brain which faithfully mimic those pains, the original traumas. And that's illustrated by the very phenomenon of phantom limb pain, where the toe or foot is missing and we still faithfully feel the pain. So what doctors are beginning to realize is that no fear, no pain, I think. And that as mammals, we don't even have pain receptors as such. We simply have sensation receptors, sensory nerve endings. And when we add fear to the sensation, then we experience physical pain. And we associate it faithfully, of course, with that sensation. But I think the whole science behind so-called nociceptors or pain receptors is going to be considered pure bunkum soon. The present theory of pain, that we have pain receptors, was never more than a theory, I believe. But and then we'll see that when people listen to each other lovingly so as to enable them to process the old traumas and the old undealt with emotions, that the pains naturally heal, and that
Yes.
actually is a scientific explanation, relatively scientific, for how Jesus and many healers and shamans and female shamans, if they're women or women, but how people and mothers have healed throughout the ages, and psychotherapists, of course, have often healed chronic pains by addressing the emotional issues. And that does explain when apparently Jesus exhorted all his followers to do what he had done. There was nothing unique in what he could do. If one human being could do it, theoretically, we all can, I think. And people who are contemplating ending it all, if they realize that their suffering has brought them to a place where they can be of tremendous healing to other people who have known similar suffering, then maybe they would look carefully to see if there was any outlet for their healing gifts, because no doubt they all have them.
Yes. Yes, and yes, I agree with that, because I've actually experienced it with clients as well, where if you find the source of that pain, and you release that source, everything changes. Even the whole body becomes rejuvenated. The face, everything becomes rejuvenated, and that is so beautiful to watch. So I like, the point is, again, if people realize when they're in the darkness and they want to end it all, how much change they can make in their lives. And we speak about Devon, I'll have his, we speak about Devon, I'll have his show in the description box. And he jumped off the building, and now he's in a wheelchair, as we know, but that changed everything for him, because he realized how much healing that he could do. So I think as well, it's when people get to a point where they're hopeless. So if we could listen and see people and realize and show them hope, I think that perhaps would change a lot as well.
I read your book I almost finished it with great interest, Carina, and the darkness is astounding. The one particular chapter you mention the passing of your husband, the man who your estranged or divorced husband. I don't know. It was that was my favorite passage of all. It was very, very moving. I'm very, very curious. One, is there anything in the depths of that darkness when you were detained and didn't see a way out and were worried about your family and son? Is there anything anyone could possibly have said then to lift you up? And two, if it's not too personal, and obviously, when your estranged or divorced husband passed, he managed to communicate with you. I found that absolutely extraordinary, and I wonder, from your point of view, and have you wondered what it might be like for the soul on the other side, what they're experiencing when they're reaching out to someone who's here? Have you wondered what that's all about?
For me, I've always experienced. I've always known that we just change forms. When I had that experience with my late ex-husband, but when my grandmother passed, I was very close to my grandmother, very, very close. And she was such a wise woman. And at the funeral, everyone was sad, of course. And it was almost like she came to me and said, "Hey, what you doing? Why are you laughing? Why are you sad? Don't be sad." And I felt like I was happy. And I know that sounds weird. Okay, so I'm sorry about that, but that's why I celebrate life when people go, because I knew she was with me, and she's been with me in other places. Like, I can hear her voice sometimes when I'm like she'll say, "What are you doing? Why are you crying?" For example, sometimes you just have bad days. So I know that we just change forms. I know. So I know that sounds really strange, but and possibly when with my late ex-husband, I mean, I hadn't spoken to him in about 10 years because I didn't have a need to speak to him. Yet he came to say goodbye. And it wasn't, and it's happened to me a few times in my life where I have people coming to say they're leaving and I don't even know who they're like far, people that I've maybe acquaintances. And they come to me and say, you know what, I'm leaving. I don't know what that means, but it's just a knowing that this is just a stopover. Like it's here. Let's enjoy life. Let's experience life. Let's have fun. Because we just change form and we go on to another life, but it's different with different experiences. So I think that's changed my whole attitude about life. I know life is hard. But maybe if we see it from a different attitude and we see it as being in a sandbox of life where we can create our own reality, who knows? I don't know if that answered the question.
It does. And have you speculated about there's an assumption that we change form, that we're not even sure of that, are we?
No, we're not. I mean, like, who knows anything? I'm just speaking about my experiences and of another reality, for the want of a better word. So yes. These are my experiences. So like
yes, yeah. But in Western entities, we kind of assume that after someone passes, it's an entirely different reality, but. The people who have these so-called near-death experiences, they speak of dying, and they never ever seem to grasp that perhaps this is their afterlife. But for me, it is. If it's a real death, if it's a real death, then they have come back to us, and they're walking around in bodily form, and it never seems to occur to them that this is their afterlife, that they are embodied ghosts once again, incarnating once again. Having died, because the body doesn't seem to have aged, so they assume the body itself is continuous. Well, how could there possibly have been death? So, I think that's relevant because we suffer here a lot to gain experiences. Apparently, some lessons are very, very, very hard. And last time we spoke, I told you about the wise lady who said to me, "Well, one thing is sure, the lessons get harder until we get them." But
that's true.
Perhaps the meta lesson is that we can actually go on using those lessons forever and ever and ever, and that we don't just learn strength and discipline and willpower and love and these general things, but that the specifics of what we learn, the mechanics even of our trades and our professions, that we go on using those for all eternity. That artists, a lot of the ghost stories I hear about famous artists like Matisse and Van Gogh, they're coming back and they're being the muse and at the shoulder, at the elbow of other artists. So they're still using what they learned physically in this life. So I'm wondering, do those ghosts realize they're ghosts, or do they feel just like us, that they're still in a real physical world and they haven't died yet? Tolle has a very, very, very interesting take on it. He says that he suggests that some people believe in reincarnation, some don't. Some believe that you can get all the lessons in one lifetime as a man or woman, which seems highly unlikely. Others believe that it's more plausible you come back again and again, and perhaps phobias are reflections on previous lifetimes where we're terrified of water or fire or heights. But he suggests that we can choose at every single moment to incarnate into a thought by being lost in our mind. Or when we've reached a certain point in evolution, we can say, oh, no, I'm not going to identify with my thought anymore and make it flesh. I'm not going to become flesh as in identifying with the form, a thought form. I'm going to realize that I am that which can observe the thought. I am that awareness, which we all are. If that's the case, then attempting suicide is apart from anything else, is pointless, because if we succeed, at most we'll come back and learn the lessons we haven't yet learned. And we may, of course, cause grief to those we love. But if we want to escape from this physicality and the vulnerability, the infinite vulnerability that goes with being a human being, we can do that at any moment anyway, with sufficient practice, simply by escaping from our minds. You mentioned people walking around listening to music in headphones. I ride my bike around a lot, and sometimes I'm so way up there that I approach total strangers even with their headphones in, and I have some wonderful message, some joke for them, and they take out the phones and we have a laugh often. It usually comes off, but I'm amazed that Californians even are so often out in nature, even in nature with headphones in, and they're obviously listening to words, thoughts. We're so compelled to. The mind says, "Oh no, this is important. Got to listen to this podcast. This is really important." The mind always has important business to do, but until we can say to the mind, "Hey, it'll all wait," the mind is running the show, and we are incarnating again and again. And that when we get to the stage of saying, "Hey, mind, just hang on, wait for me. I have more important things to do, and I am me, and I am not you, little mind," then until we get there, we're going to go on suffering anyway, aren't we?
Yes. I think that's exactly what it is. It's the mind that causes all the suffering. So once you get to that point, and when you realize that you can change it, you can change yourself. I mean, it takes a while, because I was I had to redo the missing chapter story because things changed, and I reread that chapter, and I thought to myself, wow, that girl, that woman that wrote that chapter doesn't exist anymore. It's not like she's dead, but she doesn't exist anymore, because so much has changed, and I've changed so much, and I've grown so much, and I've learned so much, and I've done so much inner work that I'm a totally different person now. So if I had to write the book now, it would have a totally different flavor to it. And perhaps that's the beauty of life, right? And being able to say, you know what, mind, and for me, that's the hardest thing. I mean, I'm getting better and better and better because I was really bad at it. But to say, you know what, mind, that's not true. It's not true. And you can say that with conviction, because it's not true that you're ugly. It's not true that you're stupid. It's not true that people look at you funny, or that person hates you because they didn't reply to an email or a message. No, don't take it personally. They might be busy, or they might not have received the message. You don't know. And that's power.
That's incredible power, yes. You know very well that Eckhart Tolle says the mind is a bit like the chief of police who is the arsonist, and he's pretending to investigate who started the fire, but he is the arsonist himself. Or the even nicer one, a little boy's in a room with a dog and accidentally walks the dog's tail and breaks it. The parent comes in and the child immediately says, the dog broke its tail and it wasn't me. That the mind is always saying the problem is this, that, or the other. It's the health, the relationship, the finances, or something. But you have to say, no, mind. The problem is you. The problem is always what the mind is saying about the situation.
Yes.
That until we really believe and get to live that, we're going to be trapped and fooled by the mind every time. So yes, there was something else you reminded me of there. Oh, it'll come back if it's important, I'm sure.
Okay, so as usual, we could have five-hour conversations, okay? But I promise to keep this short. So, Tom, out of all this, what advice would you give to someone who's in the deepest darkness? Or maybe advice isn't the right word. What pathway would you suggest someone looks at when they're in the deepest, darkest moment in their lives, where the only thing they can think of is ending it all?
Perhaps if there's any ancestor at all, like your grandmother, somebody who's passed, that they can reach out to them and try and ask them for help in prayer, or for want of a better word. I think our ancestors are always there. One of the happiest days of my life was when word reached me in America from Ireland that my mom had passed at 87. I was not expecting that, Carina. But when I got the news, I burst into floods of tears of joy. I felt, oh my goodness, she's come home and she'll always be with me now. I think our ancestors, I think we all go on and on. But if you have a close connection with any ancestor at all, any of them, and you reach out, I think they can't really mostly help us unless we actually try and initiate the if we reach out to them and beg them for help, I think they cannot possibly refuse. And whichever one we think of is probably the one who's closest and most able to help. I really think. Some people think that we should only pray to God and not these intermediaries, but all these intermediaries are God. If we're all God, all these creatures we know, all these humans, and even pets, dogs we've lost, they're all part of the divine, and they're the part that we can identify with and relate to most closely. I find when I'm low that if I ask any of my ancestors, the ones I'm closest to, for help, that they always come and help me.
I love that. On a beautiful note, thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Remember, if you really feel like there's no hope, you can reach out. It's now in the US, it's 988, the suicide hotline. And please share this with anybody that you feel we can help with. Like, it's just like that smile that can save a life. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tom, for being here. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And we'll see you all. Thank you
very much.
Bye
indeed.
for
Thank
now.
you. God bless. Bye-bye.